I'm still getting hate from fans on my comments about Baker Mayfield, primarily Buccaneers fans. But it just got worse for him. But don't let that distract you from the fact that the Falcons are one of the only teams that have signed all of their draft picks. Meaning that if we would have had a second round draft pick this year, he probably wouldn't have signed yet, based on the contract that the second round pick got in Houston. And Kirko complaining is actually better for the Falcons than you would think. Step into the bird bag. What's going on, family? It's your boy C-Mo to C Mitchell, checking in with another Falcons bird bath. Shout out to all our loyal listeners and subscribers and those who check in. See some of y'all hit that like button but haven't hit that subscribe button. Don't worry, we like family. Family. Now, recently, one of the guests in the comments asked me to do a deep dive on Braylon Trice, which I definitely started doing, and I actually got to working on a breakdown about Drake London as well as Nick Nash. But in the in-between time, I got called off to do other video editing projects for people, real estate photos. Aside from breaking down Falcons, I'm one of the dopest editors and video producers in Atlanta. But a few other things happened, like Kirk Cousins coming out complaining about his playing time, and Tristan Wirfs getting injured for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is actually going to be huge for the Falcons moving forward with the first game of the season, at least for our rookies, which we're going to get into shortly. But while I was out at a football camp today, I got to talking to an NFL cornerback, and I asked him who he thought his top 10 receivers in the league were. But more specifically, I asked him, was Drake London in that top 10 of his? And he said no. And I asked him why. And he looked me dead in the eyes and he said, because there's 10 players better than him. And I kind of laughed at him. But he followed up and said, and I quote, that boy a beast though. That boy a problem. So I asked him, man, what makes you put a guy in your top 5 or 10? And he sat there and thought for a second. I said, what, consistently doing it for 3 or 4 years? He said, yeah. 3-4 years at the top of the game. I believe that that's where Drake London is going to be at moving forward. So for the last 2 years, Kirk Cousins has been on the Netflix series, The Quarterback. And this year it just came out recently that he was saying he felt a little bit misled by the Falcons last year, actually drafting Michael Penix. And if he would have known that the Falcons were going to draft Michael Penix, he would have stayed in Minnesota because Minnesota told him that they actually were going to draft a quarterback in the draft moving forward. And he actually loved staying in Minnesota. And Kirk Cousins being disgruntled is actually a better thing for the Falcons than you would think it is. But first, let's examine the history of the situation so far. This is a guy that came and got top 10, top 12 quarterback money, and a lot of people felt like that was a little bit overpaid for a quarterback who was just coming off of an Achilles heel tear in his 35th, 36th year age going into last season. Last year, Kirk Cousins did everything he could do to lose that job. They gave him a span of about 4 or 5 weeks where he was probably the worst quarterback in the NFL, statistically at least. We had interception after interception after interception. And on top of that, Kirk lied about his injury and didn't give the coaching staff a good heads up. And to be honest, I'm not even that mad at him for doing that, because if I'm a quarterback in this league, I'm going to play through my injury as well, too. I'm not going to want to let my backup see the field. And to be honest, you could be mad as a fan and say that he cost the team wins, but if you're not the type of player that feels like you not at 100% is better than your backup, you don't deserve to be in this league. To be honest, I want a 53-man roster of a bunch of guys who feel that same exact way. And at the same time, I'm not mad at the Falcons for going out and drafting a quarterback after they paid Kirk Cousins all that money as well. A lot of people last year said, yeah, the Falcons were stupid for not investing in an edge rusher. And they said that they were stupid for not going and getting a few more weapons to put on that team and drafting somebody like Rome Odunze or somebody else in the draft that could give Kirk Cousins a few more weapons and the offense was going to suffer. The Falcons last year were still a top 10 offense. And that's with the Kirk Cousins decline in play and us missing the playoffs last year. We didn't miss a beat on offense with not having any additional weapons. Kirk Cousins was the weak link on our offense last year. And if you look at it now, we got 2 edge rushers in this year's draft instead of just having 1. I don't think we would have made the playoffs last year if we drafted an edge rusher in the first round, because we still would have had the problem that we had with Kirk Cousins, which was becoming an aging vet. I think it was brilliant that the Falcons actually hedged their bets and actually drafted their quarterback of the future and actually let the rookie sit on the bench and learn behind him. But every player in this league knows that they're competing for positions, though. And to be honest, this isn't something that's brand new when you come to the NFL. If you played college football or you played high school football, you always understood that year to year you could potentially lose your job if you don't perform or the guy behind you outperforms you. And nobody ever wants to give the guy on the bench more reps than they're getting because they don't want to lose that position. So this isn't anything new. And honestly, it kind of comes off a little bit like whiny sour grapes. Now, I'm with Kirk Cousins on wanting to be able to still play or whatever, but I think the best thing for the Falcons to do right now is to sit Kirk Cousins down and let him hold that clipboard. And if there's no way I would cut Kirk Cousins right now, I guarantee you somebody's going to get hurt this season at quarterback, and it's going to be a needy team. Now, they may not trade for Kirk Cousins, but it's always better to have that leverage. You can't let him walk, especially with the Saints having Shuck at quarterback. I mean, with all that being said, Kirk is definitely going to want to play somewhere else. Something that's evident by him being a very competitive person. He wants to play this season, and he thinks he has something left in the tank, and he only has so many years left, which means that he's more apt to probably waive his no-trade clause and go sign somewhere else, or something else that can creatively make it a little bit more favorable for the Falcons to be able to trade him in case another team does want to trade for him. But in the event that they don't trade Kirk, Kirk's just a genuine, nice guy. He's going to be willing to teach him. He already has a really good relationship with them for what they are already saying. He's showing him how to be a better veteran. So far, Michael Penix has Michael Vick, Kirk Cousins, and Matt Ryan to mentor him. And that's really good for what's essentially our rookie quarterback still having a rookie season. Even though it's the next season, he only had 3 games last year. So he needs all the experience and all the eyes in the sky. And Kirk's going to be the best clipboard holder that you can have. I know that sounds funny, but I'm not trying to clown. Honestly, I think Kirk's going to come out here. He's going to do his job. Either way, I think it's a little bit of a win-win. I think the Falcons could get maybe a 4th or 5th rounder for Kirk Cousins. Maybe even a 3rd rounder somewhere down the line. But you guys let me know in the comments. What do you think we could get for Kirk Cousins? Another piece of news that was interesting that happened while I was working on Braylon Trice and Drake London's breakdowns was that Tristan Wirfs, the offensive tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, actually, it just broke a few days ago. He's going to have knee surgery going into the season. And it's all but certain as of right now that he's going to miss the first game of the season. If not more than that, he'll probably start the season off on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. And this is a huge, huge blow for Tampa Bay. And it doesn't hurt the Falcons' chances on defense at all. And this is actually pretty good news for the Falcons' rookie defensive pass rush, as well as some of their other young defensive linemen that they have out there. Tristan Wirfs is arguably the best offensive tackle in football. If not the best, he's the 2nd or 3rd best. We're kind of splitting hairs at this point if we're talking about somebody else being better than him right now. But at this moment, I believe he is probably the best young offensive tackle in the league right now. And it's really hard to replace a guy like that. I mean, those guys are not a dime a dozen. And he's been a very huge part of Baker Mayfield's success so far since he's actually come to the Buccaneers. Baker's a guy that I said doesn't make really great decisions with the football. And if he's under pressure, he makes even worse decisions with the football. He's never really been great under pressure. And Tristan Wirfs has been a really great part of keeping him clean, not letting him take as many sacks as he would normally take. Now, there's very few offensive tackles in the league who have the strength, speed, and agility of a guy like Tristan Wirfs. Any team in the league would be at a strong disadvantage if they lost their starting offensive tackle. But a guy like this is even more of a blow. Now, I know they got to go out and play the games, and the Falcons could still lose the first game of the season, even without Tristan Wirfs being out there. But typically, defenses are a lot more ahead of the offenses at the beginning of the year. And the offenses catch up later. Offense is all about timing and rhythm and repetition. Offenses get very intricate. Defense, on the other hand, is fairly straightforward. I mean, defenses can be a bit complicated sometimes, but for the most part, defensive playbooks are not nearly as extensive as offensive playbooks are. On defense, it's mostly about read and react. It's all about action and pressure and reacting to what the offenses are doing. You want to be able to dictate things as a defense, and I think that the Falcons have a pretty good team to be able to do that this year. But a lot of this is really predicated on the type of personnel that offenses have out there. The offenses know where the ball is going to. The defenses have to try to figure out who's getting the ball and react. But if you guys don't believe me, go back and look at the stats historically at the opening of the seasons. For about the first 4 or 5 weeks, offenses tend to struggle a bit more than defenses do because they're having to get everything together and trying to have all that timing. If I'm the Falcons, I definitely would try to target that side of the offensive line. Now, typically, left tackle is usually the best offensive lineman for a team. But historically, teams like to line up their best pass rusher against the right tackle of the offense. So if I'm the Falcons going into week 1, I'm definitely attacking the right side of the offense because the backup offensive tackle for the Buccaneers is nowhere near as competent as their starting offensive tackle. And no disrespect to him, but if he was, he'd be playing somewhere else. But you guys let me know in the comments how much you think is actually going to help the Falcons with Tristan Wirfs being out the first game of the season. And what do you think the over-under on sacks for our Falcons team is going to be week 1? Do you think this is actually going to help the Falcons actually get multiple sacks in week 1? Do you think that the rookies in Jalon Walker or Pearce or potentially even one of our defensive backs will have multiple sacks in week 1. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. All right, guys, that's our show for today. Like I said, stay tuned, man. I'm going to definitely hit you guys with that breakdown on Braylon Trice, Drake London, and Nick Nash moving forward. C-Mo to C. Mitchell, Point Game Official, checking out, baby. Peace.